Uh, a very good afternoon and welcome to the next TED Talk on this theme of water-centric urban planning. At the outset, our apologies for starting it late, slightly, the usual tech glitches, unfortunately. But for those of you who are not familiar with this TED Talk series, TED's initiative is Transboundary Rivers Ecologies and Development Studies. It's an initiative that focuses on water policy and governance related challenges and issues. And this TEDS initiative is something that was established when the Ministry of Jal Shakti established a Ministry of Jal Shakti Government of India established a research chair in 2018 and supported research for pursuing, for looking into issues related initially to transboundary water governance related challenges. But then eventually we sort of spread our scope. And then we entered into an MOU with the National Mission for Clean Ganga, which supported a research program primarily with a goal of producing research and knowledge products to inform policy thinking about how we can think about rejuvenating India's rivers. It's not just about Ganga, but it goes beyond and learn from the experiences of Ganga and other related experiments that are going on at the moment. If you want to call it, that doesn't mean that Ganga cleaning is an experiment, but then it's basically build on the experiences of cleaning Ganga and think about how we can scale it up towards conceptualizing a policy ecosystem, policy and institutional ecosystem to support rejuvenating India's rivers. So it's under this research program that we have this one particular research project that is looking at the master planning, which is basically statutory spatial planning in Indian cities. And somewhat critically to look at how we can accommodate water and other related environmental concerns in the statutory planning process. It is under this theme that we are organizing this talk. And those of you who have attended or otherwise have been following it up would know that the series primarily focuses on practitioners' perspectives. So one of those things that we learned somewhat early in our research was that the knowledge about or the research about statutory planning in Indian cities, and that looks at environmental concerns is actually quite limited. And very limited is published as well. So if you look at the body of work that is there accessible, whether it is as scholarly publications or otherwise generally reports kind of thing, that's quite limited. And then what we also understood that while it is limited, we also realized that there is extensive knowledge and experimentation that is happening in the practitioner's domain. And that is something that we want to sort of learn from and then build on those insights that we can distill from the practitioners' experiences and see if there is some way that we can reimagine the statutory planning instrument, which is usually called master plan, but then also development plan. So that's the idea. And under this, I mean, this is this particular talk, which Ashleen Kaur from NIUA is giving, you could say it's a kind of extension or otherwise part 2 of the earlier talk that was given by her colleague, Dr. Victor Shinde, who leads the environment and water vertical at NIUA. So one of the other things that we have learned is that actually there is very limited, consistent body of work that is being produced on these particular interests. I mean, particularly if you want to call it water-centric urban planning. And NIUA, National Institute of Urban Affairs, happens to be one of those hubs that have been producing related work for quite a long time. I think I don't know exactly when the program has begun, but if you look it up, I think there's quite a few knowledge products that are both policy oriented as well as practitioner oriented. So if you would see, I think NIE's website has what they called urban river management plans. So there is a set of urban river management plans that were prepared, and also there were certain policy knowledge products that were produced. And then now there is I think scaling up of these efforts is happening with 60 urban river managements are getting prepared. I think it's NIA which is coordinating it. So you're talking about someone who has been at the forefront of this thinking, coming and sharing their experiences about this particular very specific question about how we pursue water-centric urban planning. So with that, I'm actually, first of all, I'm very happy to that Ms. Ishlin Kaur is here, because she is one of those project leads, if you may call it, who has been leading these efforts at NIUA. And also, I would like to thank her because she has agreed to do this at a very short notice. I mean, see, we had some troubles with scheduling, but then she was very kind to basically agree and then come out to share their experiences. As I said, this is an extension of the talk that Victor has given earlier, and Dr. Victor Shinde shared the framework that they pursued to pursue this, to take up this urban river management plan preparation. And then we requested him to share some experiences of preparing the statutory plans, preparing urban river management plans, but how the urban river management plans engage with the statutory master plan. But I don't, if some of you recall, but he could only present the framework and then give a flavor of how they tried to use it when the master plans were prepared for the city. And he did touch upon the Delhi master plan. But Ishlin is going to talk about much more than Delhi master plan, I think, and take us further on it. And then we are hoping that NIA would agree as they pursue these 60 master plans, they would keep coming to, they would be willing to share their experiences as they go about preparing the 60 master plans, and then engage with this question about how, about exploring this intersection between water conservation as well as water security for urban settings and the statutory master planning process. So with that, just to give a brief introduction about Shlin. She did not put it here, but then I know that she's an architect planner, and she is a senior urban environment specialist at NIUA, driving transformative initiatives under the water and environmental vertical. With more than a decade of experience, she has been instrumental in projects like shallow aquifer management under Amrut 2.0 and scaling up of urban river management plans with the NMCG and the World Bank. She has also led efforts to enhance city and community level water sensitive practices under Australia-India Water Security Initiative, promoting inclusive, nature-based solutions and participatory approaches to urban water management. She's also worked on the master plan for Delhi 2041, which she reminded me that it has not been yet notified, to ensure the incorporation of water-sensitive and eco-friendly urban development strategies within the plan. Thank you again, Aislinn. But quickly, just before I hand it over, some housekeeping rules. One, please put off your cell phones. Second, Aislinn would speak for about 45 minutes, and then we will open for discussion. For those people who have joined us online, please put your questions in the Q&A space. I think usually they end up in chat, but please put it in Q&A space. And then I have my associate forwarding them on WhatsApp to me, and I hope to catch up with these questions at the end of the talk. With that, Aislinn.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you to CPR for providing us this opportunity. We are very happy to share this work because this is not only about, increasing the outreach of the work that we are doing, but also to possibly see synergies with different partners who are working in this space. And that's always very, very valuable for us. And CPR has been a long-standing partner for us. So really looking forward to this session, and also to the participants who have joined online. Thank you very much. I think without further ado, if I can just move on to the presentation. Okay. So I'm actually not going to dive much into the issues that we have around rivers and associated ecosystems within Indian cities, because that's pretty much known to all of us. It's always great to talk from the solution space. And I believe the previous talk that was given by Dr. Victor Shinde would have, extensively covered the multiple issues that we have. So I'll directly come to how master plans currently, or development plans for smaller cities, are currently probably a little agnostic to these natural ecosystems. So this is a study that we did in 2020, wherein we actually looked at 13 cities and their development plans. This consisted of multiple scales, like we looked at larger metropolitans like Kolkata and Chennai. We looked at smaller cities like Rajmahal and Sahibganj, 9 of them being in Ganga River Basin and 4 of them outside Ganga River Basin. So we were basically trying to assess them on 11 parameters, which according to us were very, very essential to be considered in the master plan, to basically really see where do we lie, when it comes to considering or mainstreaming the river thinking within Indian urban ecosystem. So if I can just briefly touch upon these parameters, the first were general parameters, starting from, is there any background data on rivers or associated ecosystem elements? Unfortunately, a lot of cities don't even have the baseline for what is happening with our natural assets. So starting from there, do in master plans do such information or data? Do they figure or get some sort of mention? Then there were planning parameters, starting from delineation of rivers or assigning a specific land use zone to rivers and water bodies, to looking at development control norms that are related to master plan and are focusing on river or water bodies in some way, and also to flood resilience. Now that has become a common problem within Indian cities. Better that we are seeing recurrent flooding events. Not all of them are related to rivers, but all of them are definitely related to water logging, or a lot related to, in the end, stormwater management in our cities. So and the last set of parameters were environmental parameters, where we were looking at specifically river pollution, river ecosystem and environmental services. Do we, in our master plans, while we consider rivers largely as water sources, do we also look at preserving them? So one of the major issues right now we are facing in Indian cities is that we are moving further and further away to get water. And Delhi is a classic example. So there's hardly any focus on local source sustainability. And that is something that we also try to assess through these master plans. And lastly, also the associated ecosystems like groundwater. Do we see linkages between groundwater and river? Do we also, kind of consider, when we are considering groundwater, are we considering those linkages? So those were some of the parameters we assessed. So this is what it largely looked like, but just for the benefit of everyone. So none of the Ganga Basin cities actually had any vision centered around the river, despite of the fact that we have this ecologically sensitive, very significant ecosystem element, or a river passing through. None of the development plans or master plans had any vision around the river. Secondly, only one city had river zone delineation, and this was Chennai. Chennai is actually one of the cities, the master plans were really, really good. and we could see a larger integration of water into the master plan of Chennai. So that was one city that fared really well in that assessment. But the smaller cities, especially cities like Sahibganj and Rajmahal, there were barely any planning, strategies around river. So this was a big, insight for us that how do we really go about now bringing this river consideration across different scales, because these smaller cities are actually rapidly urbanizing. So there's a tendency to use that land quickly. And that's why more and more we are seeing that development is happening until the edge. So how do we start bringing this from the start itself? Um, then again, in terms of actionable details, we could hardly find anything besides in the Chennai master plan. Most of the cities had like a little bit of mention here and there. A large part of it was on rainwater harvesting when it comes to groundwater, that too ad hoc rainwater harvesting, and nothing, too much linked to the whole ecosystem approach. So these were some of the larger insights that we got. And while it sounds a little pessimistic right now, things have changed since then. And one of the, okay, I'm sorry. So one of the major,
You need
this is,
power.
so one of the major things that happened since then was the formulation of Master Plan of Delhi 2041. And while 2021 was also pretty much sensitive to the rivers context, but we had almost, passed certain stages wherein it was sort of irrevocable to come back. But 2041 took a stance to change a lot of those things. So I'll actually go into that detail later. I'll touch upon Delhi Master Plan, but the larger insights from this particular assessment was that there was a lack of vision around river. There was no proper delineation of river zone. Of course, because there's no river zone, automatically there were no bylaws or development control norms around them. There was inadequate coverage of the ecology and environmental services that river provides. Like, we are somehow totally ignoring the fact that a large part of a city's economy is actually, because of the river. So all of those things were pretty much missing. On the top of it, in cities, in urban areas, we have multiple plans. So how do you really see, bring out development plan as the plan that we focus on? So there were these following reasons, and I'll just quickly move through why we went for development plan or master plan. First and foremost is that it's a legally binding document. Every word written there is important, and it can be, taken to the court. Then the capacity to involve citizens. So master plan is the only, or maybe one of the plans that actually really has to take in the citizens' opinions. So it does have that participatory element within it. It is the document, and in case of Delhi Master Plan, we really saw it, that it has the capacity to bring different departments together. So you're creating those synergies. It has a horizon of 20-30 years, which gives us a chance to keep it dynamic, keep on changing the strategies as and when the river is changing. And then for cities, it is, kind of putting in everything, a roadmap in place. So how does river becomes a major part of that development roadmap was our goal. So that's why we started focusing on the master plans or development plans. And then there was this strategic guideline document that NMCG and NIOA came up with, which kind of guides city on how they can make river sensitive master plans. So for now, what you see on your screen actually looks very theoretical. How do you go about localizing national policies? How do you create sectoral strategies that are in ways water sensitive? How do you assign land use to water bodies or rivers? How do you, create or develop development control norms that are more river centric? And how do you put in norms and standards that are out there? There are CPHEO norms, there are CPCB norms. How do you start integrating them within the master plan document? and also the special projects and some larger strategies. So these were the 7 entry points that we saw, that these are the places that where we can start guiding the cities on how they can make their development plans or master plans more river sensitive. So now I'll go on to explaining, how some of these entry points we could leverage while creating MPD 2041, Master Plan of Delhi 2041. And like Sir pointed out, I have written specifically mentioned that it's still a draft because it has not been notified so far. But these were the different elements that we considered in the master plan. So one of the basic foundational things that we did was create a very extensive baseline of, so you have baseline where specifically river and associated elements, they find their mention across physical infrastructure, which is your largely water supply, drainage and sewage, and a specific or very focused baseline on environment. So these are the two baselines that we created. This is extensive overlays of different layers of Delhi that were put together. And some of the major facts, for example, so far Delhi has already taken initiative to rejuvenate 250 water bodies. Delhi actually has 1,000 or more than 1,000 water bodies listed, but when we started mapping them on the map or on the plan, we actually could find only 800. So there were some revelations during the course of even the baseline, that what is really happening. Then another thing that is, that really came out very pointedly was that Delhi is stated to be one of the greenest cities of India. But what is happening is that a lot of this green is inequitably distributed. Where we sit in New Delhi, we have a lot of green. But when we start moving towards the periphery, towards the east of Delhi, that so then now largely talking about, how Yamuna was made the center of the environment part of the master plan, the environment strategies of the master plan. So the plan largely followed a three-pronged approach. And, while it seems that some of these points are not directly related to Yamuna, but a lot of these points are actually related to water sensitivity, which means, you're kind of reducing the pressure that Yamuna is facing within Delhi. So there were strategies around managing water demand, of more and more reusing the treated wastewater, water body rejuvenation, blue-green infrastructure. So this time, for the first time, plan came up with a factor called green-blue factor, wherein every new development, if they, follow a certain set of elements, green-blue elements, they will get some incentive FAR. So I hope I'm talking a lot in architecture and planning terms. If at any point, you feel that I need to explain more, please do let me know. Then next was creating number of green-blue continuums within the city and waste management, both liquid and solid waste management. Another very starking thing, which we probably always see but do not realize. So one of the landfills, which again is not a scientific landfill, is actually very close to Yamuna. In fact, maybe many of them, but Bhalsaba specifically is very close to the stream that's flowing into Yamuna. So we could find certain things and, we tried and see if there are any ways to resolve them. So when it comes to Yamuna, one of the great things that Master Plan did this time was to mark the 1 in 25-year flood line. And create not just the river stream, but also the floodplains, as the zone O. So now we have a dedicated zone O within the master plan, which is the river zone. And that governs the development control norms. And even zone O is actually divided into zone O1 and O2 because there was a realization that development has already happened. Now, what do you do about that? And that's the case with all of our cities. Development has already almost reached the edge. But is there a chance to course correct? So that's the strategy that the master plan took, that while right now the development is there, in case future any redevelopment comes, it will not come in zone O. So there was this course correction that was sought as the solution. So separate use zone, and not just the river, even water bodies beyond 1 acre have been given a dedicated use zone. So realizing that all of this is associated, it's a network and not just the river in isolation. So next was to, of course, create people river connect, which is very important because most of our policies fail because there's no association that people have with it. And today, if you ask the people from younger generation, if they know that there's a river in the city, most of them will actually answer, we don't know about it. We have never seen it. Maybe half of us would say that we have never gone to Yamuna. So, how do you increase that association with the river, that there's a natural asset you have? So for that, we created like very dedicated activity zones, but no development zones. They are just green areas that people will use. And one of the examples of that, of course, is what DDA is doing right now. There's Bansera, there's Asita East. A lot of such projects are coming, which will really enhance that association with the river. And
quickly, a clarification. You mentioned about these water bodies.
yes,
They were also provided the similar kind of buffer zone for each of the water bodies?
yes, but smaller buffer zone.
Okay.
So for
That is-
drains and water bodies, a smaller buffer zone. For river, it's 300 meters. But for drains and water bodies, it's maybe, it's 25 to 30 meter. No, this is the river. I think it's 9 to 10 meters, actually. It's not much because the realization is that the development has already reached
That's
the edge. So yes, the water bodies and the drains have also been provided 9 meters buffer. And the last part is riparian buffer. Riparian, for everyone's benefit, is the natural vegetation that exists around a river. And one of the more known initiatives that Delhi has right now is the Yamuna Biodiversity Park, wherein they have really improved the riparian vegetation along the river. And believe me, if you go inside the park, you will actually not recognize that it's the same river that's flowing outside the, that park premise. So it changes completely once you start restoring the riparian edge of the river. And then comes the larger, overarching strategies that end up helping your river. So we also have to realize that while the focus needs to be Yamuna, there needs to be multiple other, strategies and solutions to have a very larger city level change on how we look at water. So largely this time, the narrative was to change it from consumption to more towards conservation. So a lot of strategies focused on demand management and use of treated water. So the first is, of course, potable water management. It was decided that for every new development or for any redevelopment area that comes up, whether you are redensifying, whether you are increasing densities, whether you are going high rise, whatever you are doing, you are only going to get this much water, and all the rest of water you are going to reuse. You will have to have systems on site. So it has changed for land pooling policy. It has come down to 40 GPCD. And for all the regeneration and TOD schemes, which are touted to be very, very high rise and very, so to say, modern, are actually coming down to 50 GPCD. So there has always been this conversation also that we say that 135 LPCD is the water that we provide, DGB provides But again, there's a very stark contrast in that also. So it's not equitable distribution. Towards the north of Delhi, you are only getting 70, 80 LPCD. So, how do you start looking at now changing such things and providing more equitable distribution? So those were some of the things that we were looking at. Then, of course, maximizing the retention of stormwater. Now, the major problem in that is, and again, universal across our cities, is that a number of stormwater drains are actually, they have a lot of sewage water mixed. So how do you start changing that? So there, I think so far the approach has not been a success in Delhi, because we are using very, very high cost systems, creating tertiary treatment plants to treat water within drains, which is not a sustainable model for the long run. So now we are starting to look at whether there are more nature-based solutions or maybe hybrid solutions to start looking at our drain management. So we are in constant conversation with the irrigation and flood control department on how we can bring about such solutions within the whole drainage management in Delhi. And the last part is about wastewater management and how do you increase reuse of treated wastewater generated in the city. So across different sectors, whether it's economy, it's shelter, it's any new policy that is coming up, you have mandatory treated reuse water usage within the master plan. So we are also really, really excited to see what comes out once it's notified. So yeah, I mean, really, really fingers crossed that that's really brought into the legal system. So now if we start looking at those 7 entry points that we were talking about in the initial slides. So how did Delhi master plan started looking at, not maybe the best or the ideal scenario, but at least a step in that direction of river-centric master planning. So localizing national policies, one of the major priorities, national priorities right now is to enhance reuse. And Delhi master plan has really, really integrated it within its whole sectoral strategies. The next part is, if you have different sectors, if you cannot disassociate water from greens, from drains, from transport for that matter. So how do you have all an overarching water-centric strategy across these sectors? Something, again, Delhi Master Plan has successfully sort of done that. If you start looking at the policy clauses of every sector, there is, water sensitive design built into all of them. Then land use assignment, like I have already explained, that river and water bodies have been given dedicated land uses, and also the corresponding development control norms. Norms and standards, we can't look away from the norms and standards that already are there. So how do you really push and integrate them within the plan so that we don't have like 10 different norms and standards playing out? So how do you start integrating those within the current development plans? And then some sort of special projects. So right now Delhi is actually looking at creating more than or actually 6 biodiversity parks across Yamuna. And what is interesting is that some of them are actually going beyond the municipal boundary or administrative boundary of Delhi. So largely looking at a regional continuum of these blue-green assets. So that was largely, from the lens of how do you make existing master plans or development plans river-centric. But there's another thing that we have been doing, which Sir also pointed out in the beginning. This is an urban river management plan framework, which largely, the basis is that you cannot look only at pollution abatement when you talk about river or river management in urban areas. It has to have the economic connotations, the socio-cultural connotations that a river has within a city. So this plan, this framework, if you see, it actually integrates all of those. So the first 6 objectives that you see are all ecological, like all ecological considerations of a river ecosystem. If you look at 7 and 8, they are largely economic considerations of the river ecosystem. And the last 2 are very important. How do you bring in people or different stakeholders together for this? So this whole framework was created to actually give cities a template on how to start preparing or moving towards urban river management. And this has been really successful. Like sir said that we have already created 5 urban river management plans, and we are now moving on to 60 more. And what has been really interesting is that cities outside Ganga Basin are now approaching us that we want to make these urban river management plans. So it's been really, the uptake has been really encouraging for us. And again, always looking for synergies to make this better. So one of the major, objectives of master plan of urban river management plan that really starts influencing the master plan is regulation of activities in floodplains. This is actually going to solve a number of other problems that are associated with river. How do you start looking at river not just in its isolation, but also, the banks, the floodplains, and also the associated elements. So this was one of the major, objectives where we could see that the cities are ready to incorporate them into the development plan. So what you see on the screen is actually the plan of Aurangabad, which is now Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar in Maharashtra. And very interesting case because it has 2 seasonal rivers, and it's the first city upstream. So the rivers actually originate within the city. And again, another interesting point about the city is that the rivers go 60 kilometer downstream. They meet the Jaikwadi Dam, and the city then pumps the water back for water supply from 60 kilometer downstream. So, it's counterintuitive to everything that we talk about, whether it's energy demand, carbon emission, lowering the costs. So largely to change that perspective that, you really have to look at how do you restore the river within the city. So one of the rivers is Kham River and the other one is Sukna. And Kham River, it flows for 14 kilometers within the city limit. And our focus was largely on Kham River and how, you start looking at restoring it. So again, interestingly, if you see this, in the plan, the upper catchment from where it starts, the catchment area and the Harsal Lake, the overflow of Harsal Lake is actually Kham River. And what we observed when we went there was that because there was a lot of encroachment happening upstream, the river actually disappeared in the lower stretch. So in the existing land use plan, if you see, it's actually green. It has not been changed to any other use. But when we started looking at the proposed land use, all you see is yellow around the river, which we could see on site also. It had already started happening.
Yellow means residential.
Yellow means residential. So there was no consideration given to the fact that this is the upper catchment area. If you start building here, the river is actually going to disappear completely. And it had started happening in stretches. So we showed them this, this is your existing and this is your proposed. Same happened with the other river, Sukna River. What you see in the existing land use is that one side of the river is all green and one side is yellow. But when we looked at the proposed, it actually again was all yellow. So we started telling them that, you have Maharashtra, in fact, is one of the states that's very progressive in this. They have already come up with guidelines on how you can earmark your rivers or river zones. So they have a policy in place of blue and red flood lines, which looks at 1 in 25-year and 1 in 50-year flood lines. So they already had policy in place, but the development plan was not, it was not reflected in the development plan. So that's when we realized that irrigation and flood control department have actually marked they have already marked, and with them they have the red and blue lines because they have been mandated under the state policy to do this. The only simple, no rocket science there. The only simple thing that needed to be done was to juxtapose that on the development plan. And that's exactly what we recommended to the city, that you do this. Now, one of the major issues that comes post this is you don't have ownership, land ownership data of what's happening around the river. The city says that some of this land is private. What do we do? Now that's where we need to start finding solutions. That, okay, your plan is reflecting it now, but you're still not able to implement it. Why? Because the ownership is not clear, the entitlement is not clear. There's a lot of development that's already there. Like, how do you go about changing that? Those are the difficult questions. So what we did was we told them that you have marked this for Kham River. For Sukna River, you already have guidelines within the state policy that if you don't have blue and blue and red lines, what do you do? Like, you have a 9-meter and 15-meter buffer, you still have to, leave before the development starts. These areas have to be no development or restricted development zones. And we just gave them a list of permissible activities that are already given in the river regulation zoning guidelines, that this is what you can do. So that was the, a little bit, and the plan that has been recently notified actually reflects that. The recent development plan, they already have river zone marked now. Same success we saw in both Ayodhya and Kanpur, where in Ayodhya, we have 6-meter no development zone around drains and 9-meter riparian buffer around water bodies, which they have now incorporated in the notified development plan. In Kanpur, again, Kanpur was the first urban river management plan that was developed. And in Kanpur, again, they have in their master plan incorporated 100-meter no development zone around Ganga. And again, a huge achievement was 30-meter no development zone around Pandu. So you just don't look at the main river. You also look at the other rivers that are within the city. So while, we are seeing some shifts, some change, there are definitely problems on translating this on ground. And those are some problems that I have listed out. And I'm sure that all of us, we are working in this space, we might have solutions, and always open to listen also on what can we do for such problems. So one, like I pointed out, there's lack of ownership details. So even the ULB doesn't know how to go about, translating that on ground. The next is that we have multiple agencies and lack of interagency coordination. In Delhi's case, it was really, appalling for us that one drain actually has 17 agencies that are responsible for it. So how do you go about changing that one drain? And that's something that you face across then rivers and drains and water bodies, multiple ownership, multiple approvals. How do you really simplify these? Now, just digressing a little bit, but recently we were in Rishikesh, and we are also developing urban river management plan for Rishikesh now. Again, along Ganga, very famous. Ganga is right now in good condition, pristine. Now, when you start looking at the administrative hassles or, roadblocks that you have, Rishikesh, thankfully, the development plans kind of resolves it, but Rishikesh has 3 districts, it's divided into 3 districts that are kind of jurisdictionally responsible. So what we know as Rishikesh is actually Rishikesh, Munni Ki Reti, Tapovan, and there's also Swargashram. And while Rishikesh is district Dehradun, Munni Ki Reti is different district, Tapovan is different district, Swargashram, which is the other bank, is Pauri district. Now there are 4 districts that are associated, and how do you now go about taking, or who is the decision maker then? So thankfully
So Rishikesh Urban Development Authority
is MDDA. Yeah, so MDD
spreads
Mussoorie.
across 4 districts.
No, so Mussoorie Dehradun Development Authority only takes care of the part that's in Dehradun district. But thankfully, the larger state, town planning is sort of trying to make an integrated plan. But again, the question is who is implementing it? Which district, which ULB, who is responsible? So, these administrative things are questions for us also. Like, all of this looks really good on paper, but when it comes to implementation, how do you really, solve these kind of problems? uh, One of the major problems again is encroachment or development until the river edge. I would like to, very pointedly say here that we universally, whatever we see within that river zone, we count it as encroachment. But there are also dependent communities, dependent livelihoods that are there. And again, quoting Aurangabad's example, because they did something that was in ways inspiring. So they had this cattle shed running within the floodplain. And the question was whether to remove them, relocate them, or whether to keep them. Of course, we always go for quick solutions. Oh, remove them. Just remove them from, because they are in the floodplain, they are anyway unauthorized, just remove them. But thanks to the civil society and a lot of people who are working there, and also the realization that multiple surrounding areas are dependent on that dairy and cattle shed, what they did eventually was to create a slurry treatment plant within that floodplain area. So the cattle shed, all of the waste that was coming from there was connected to that. And then the treated water was being discharged into the river. And whatever the byproduct was, it was being used to, restore the riparian edge. So we really need to come up with such out of box solutions at scale, which are win-win for everyone. Not every time we can, just remove people from, saying or citing that it's floodplain. So those are some of the good examples that cities have taken up. Again, lack of understanding of interconnectedness of different ecosystems, not just surface and groundwater, but also how we're looking at basin, district, urban, like how are these influencing each other? And of course, lack of technical capacities. So these were some of the larger, issues that we were seeing. And the largest among them is actually not there on the slide, but it's actually how do you translate all of this on ground? That is our largest issue. So to sort of counter that, there was this alliance formed in 2020 called River Cities Alliance. It started with 30 cities. Now it's 146 cities strong, 146 river cities of India, covering 20 states now, 37 river basins, covering more than 93 rivers, and so on. So we have been really seeing progress with this alliance. And just coming from some of the issues, that I just pointed out, we were trying to figure out what are the ways to resolve some of them and whether this alliance can really help looking at some of these issues. So of course, there's large part of this alliance is to look at river considerations in master plans. You start looking at the development plans and master plans, and you see how much we can influence them towards becoming more river centric. We are developing URMPs in a number of these cities. We are also trying to partner with multiple organizations working at different scales. So how do you now, connect urban river management plan to basin management plan? That's again already happening. Then the knowledge capacities that are missing, how do you increase them, through different mediums, through different ways? Also, looking at developing a cadre of river sensitive urban professionals. A large part of our planning, like I remember never during my architectural planning, someone told me that when you are making very large underground infrastructure, you should also look at what's the impact on aquifers. Never have I come across. Only on the job I've realized, oh my God, what are we doing? I don't think it even features in environment impact assessment that we do of such large projects. So those are the questions that we only think once we start working on the real problems that are there. So on and so forth, there are a number of, objectives that River Cities Alliance have. What is important is this, because this is where we also see a lot of partnerships and synergies under River Cities Alliance. We have in pipeline 10 state level programs on river sensitive master plans. We want to actually build this capacity from the top. We are already working with the center. We also want to bring all of this knowledge at the state level, and then of course to the cities. Then by end of 2025, we are actually going to review 20 more master plans now and see how, and they are in different stages of their preparation or almost being notified. So we are trying to see how we, kind of inform those decision making within cities. 60 urban river management plans by end of 2027. We are looking at 4 basin specific clusters where we look at the larger basin chapters rather than just looking at cities in isolation now. We have 10 thematic expert groups, understanding that NIUA doesn't have all the capacity. We, of course, need experts coming from different sectors who can help us guide or refine or strengthen our knowledge more. We have in the past associated with universities, but now they are going to be dedicated river chairs, so that we also start looking at urban planning, architecture, social development, schools. How do they start, imparting or influencing or shaping river sensitive professionals in future? And we want to create a dashboard wherein within the urban river management plan, we have very simple URM index, which looks at the baseline of river in any river city. So start creating that for, for starters, for 20 cities to also every 5 years look at what is happening to the river now. So hoping we are ending at a positive note. There's a lot happening in this space. So there's always hope. And I think we are, sort of moving in that direction that wherein cities have, because, now earlier we used to go to cities and impose this on them. Now we are getting requests that we also want to do this. So that's the kind of shift that's encouraging for us. And on your screen, you see river sensitive master plan guidelines. So if we want to really scale it up, we would need all the hands on the deck. So, so yeah, you can also go through it. And if you have any suggestions or feedback, please do reach out to us. Thank you. I hope I didn't take more than the allotted time.
No, not at all. In fact, the time, you must have heard that alarm. I was just trying to remind myself, but I thought this is so interesting that we should actually listen more. But then I think you seem to have planned it really well. Just quickly before we turn to the questions from the room and as well as the online, you have mentioned about it, and I think that is one of the key problems, because we had a chance to look at the work that you have been doing, and then the kind of products that you've been able to produce that are quite accessible. The problem about implementation and translating some of these techniques or opportunities to bring in practices that address water sensitivity or water-centric approaches. In your consultations, because you had a chance to speak with these practitioners or authorities, when you broach this subject, could you, you mentioned about it as an implementation challenge. Could you share some of your thoughts? I mean, what is that you gathered? For instance, it could be a problem with, if you take Delhi, it is Delhi Development Authority. And if you look at all those recommendations that you made under MPD 2041, you start thinking about how many of them can be implemented by DDA, Delhi Development Authority. Now, that kind of question when it comes. And then second level is that you mentioned about CPCB to maintain the norms. Can DDA lean on CPCB to invest in maintaining the norms that you wanted? The third one that I thought was somewhat missing in it, but you did allude to it, is this increasing risks, the floods in Delhi that you mentioned about, which have their origins beyond the jurisdictional boundary. So these are, teething problems in making sense out of it, or otherwise making meaning out of this master plan instrument, or the approaches that you recommend. I'm not saying that you should give answers to it, but just share your thoughts about what has been your own takeaways from the conversations or consultations with the people who are supposed to implement these and give effect to this statutory master plan. You want to, there is a follow-up question.
That the URMPs are being increasingly aligned with the basin planning. So by basin planning, do you mean, because as asked, that a lot of risks are within, beyond the territorial boundaries of DDA and other. So basin planning, do you mean by what is being prepared by NRCD, those basin master plans? Or because I think GRMBP is the only available document we have as of now as an operational Ganga River Basin Management Plan. So when you say that other URMPs in being integrated with the basin plan, so what plan do you exactly mention
Okay.
about this?
Okay, so this was a knowledge that, I also got pretty recently, that the first basin management plan was actually Tapi and not Ganga. That was prepared by GIZ. Yeah. New knowledge for me also, but just for information.
But GRMBP was prepared with the IIT consortium.
Yeah. So now if you actually look at, because we are also doing another research within the 14 major river basins of India, now you have extensive reports by IITs on every basin. And while our, focus area is largely on Ganga River, because we happen to be working with National Mission for Clean Ganga, but there are other river basin management plans also coming up. GIZ is right now working with also Brahmaputra board, already has worked with Tapi, and of course there's Ganga. So these three are in my knowledge. I'm not sure if there are other basin management plans also coming.
Nirmada is also
in pipeline.
fine.
Yes, so
But-
should I?
but
Okay,
yes.
yes, okay.
Maybe she took away all the thunders.
So in terms of receptivity, I think when we started in 2019 to where we are today, and even if you talk about Delhi's case, because recently there has been an announcement on the urban river management plan for Delhi too, and that has been done by the Honorable Prime Minister. So of course, the receptivity has increased multifold. And that's not just coming from the fact that, there are these, mandates or impositions, but also realization of the fact that we can't do without it, right? So, kudos to DDA for taking a biodiversity park, Yamuna Biodiversity Park, because I'm not joking. When I went there, I was like,
Is this possible at all?
Yamuna? Yeah, exactly. It it just transforms when you go inside. So, and I think those results really encourage you, because then it's possible. It's possible to see a change, which with the kind of magnitude and volume of problems that we have in Indian cities, it sometimes is discouraging. How do you really solve for it? It's not just one, it's multiple associated problems. So that receptivity is more and more increasing, and that we are seeing not just in urban river management, we are seeing it across different water programs that we have. We started with 10 cities for groundwater management. We are now at 75 cities. And, cities like Bangalore, cities like Chennai, they are leading by example, Delhi itself. So receptivity wise, yes, it has increased. And it's very encouraging to see that they are listening now and they are ready to, take it ahead through the means that they have. In terms of having, DDA or development plan or master plans governing a number of other institutions that probably can make all of these strategies successful. It's not just DDA, it needs to be MCD, it needs to be Delhi Jal Board. So different agencies need to come together to make this possible, to implement this plan. And again, one of the good things, which was, I'll say, a baby step towards this, was that TDA could really gather the whole working group. So there was a whole working group which had top officials as representatives. They sat together and discussed this, that how we can start implementing it now. Of course, it still needs more teeth. It still needs, more push, but I believe it can happen. And I think the major stakeholder that we sometimes, miss out on is the political representative, because when the will starts coming from that level, everything starts moving. So that's one of the stakeholder group that we really need to tap into. And about floods. So again, floods is one of the major problems. And while, there's this growing stark realization that we can't do much with wherein the development has already reached, that stage, or it's right up until the edge of the river. But wherever we can, we are trying to tell cities that right now you have such riparian stretches left. Please don't let encroachment or development get to it now. So start protecting now. And again, like in Delhi's case, there's always a way to course correct. Also look at, different strategies through which we can do that. Because so one of the major focuses of National Mission for Clean Ganga right now is how do you go towards eco-friendly riverfront development. So, how do you look at different eco-friendly or river-sensitive ways to, start developing those riverfronts rather than the norm that has been created. So yeah, I mean, there's hope, sir.
Right. Thank you.
Lots of hope.
Thank you. No, certainly not. I mean, even though they are baby steps, certainly commendable. I mean, it's quite encouraging and inspiring. So we'll first take a round of questions around the table, Namita, and then perhaps you. Is there any other? Okay, Sarang.
Thank you so much, Ashwin, for a very informative talk. I have three questions. The first is that, many of the things that you have described happened. They didn't happen in a vacuum, right? In the sense that there are laws that govern the fact that you cannot have things happening by the riverfront, river, like in the area near the river. You can't happen. There are laws about this. So it's obviously happened. The last stakeholder that you mentioned, as well as the other stakeholders, obviously a connivance between the political, bureaucratic, and there's like mafia that sell like those land pieces to people to actually come and live there. So I don't think that, it's the master planners are obviously aware of these things that are happening, right? So how are we going to ensure that this doesn't happen again with these plans? The second question, I think, is a little bit more philosophical, in the sense that I do think that the title of your talk, as well as the entire thing, and it's great that it's happening, but isn't having a river-centric master plan, or thinking that urban planning can actually rejuvenate rivers, it's very anthropocentric. It's very sort of, it puts humans above rivers, it puts humans above the environment, whereas actually humans are part of the environment. And it's not just about rivers, we also have urban forests. So my own work, just to tell you, so I head the land rights initiative here, and I do believe that humans are part of the environment, and land, water, forest are part of one indivisible ecosystem. So you can't just focus on rivers, you can't just focus on land, and you can't just focus on forests. You have to look at them all together. So isn't the approach still very anthropocentric, and doesn't it sort of create the same problems we're going to end up with? And the third question was about the increasing role of corporates in planning, in redevelopment, and so on, to the extent that we have never seen before. And the fact that given the fact that government is composed of representatives, and still we see this sort of disconnection between what the laws that are made and what is actually happening in practice and what the people want. How do we ensure greater accountability when there's more and more corporate money, as well as corporates sort of doing these redevelopment plans, whether it is slum redevelopment or river redevelopment?
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you want to take more? Because there are already three questions there.
No, I think I'll.
You will respond to her
I'll
first.
respond first. and otherwise I'll lose track.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I think a lot of those questions, of course, are pretty much related to the real challenges that exist out there. And while it's easy to talk and, say that all of this is possible, there are, of course, these things on ground that will always present themselves as roadblocks. So some of those I might be able to answer, some of those even I don't have answers to, or maybe as as an institution, we are working towards them, but have not found like, ideal situations that are there, like something about mafia. Those are problems, like those are largely now also beyond planning. It's largely law enforcement. Now, the problem, and this is a discussion we used to have during the master plan days also, and while we understand that we see master plan as that document that can change a lot with the city, but it has its limitations. It can only do so much. Tomorrow, DDA officials cannot go on site and become the police, right? So that's where I say that, a large part of it is political will. When they start understanding, oh, this is really, going to help in the long term benefit, they are the ones who can really move things. And that's what we have seen in cities too, where we had the political will or political representation. There were amazing results. Again, ideal situation, not everyone is there to, listen to us, but then there are people who are also listening. So to tap into them, to find opportunity there's, and sort of, I'm also answering back in a little bit of a philosophical way, but to really tap into the opportunities that we have rather than just looking at the constraints. So it's maximizing those opportunities, and that's exactly, where the cities are saying that kind of seeing that kind of transformation. So coming directly to laws, and of course there's an enforcement problem. We all know that, like, every master plan, it's somehow is failing because there's no enforcement, whether it's it's not restricted to water, land. It's as simple as something like parking, right? We are failing miserably, and that's where we also need to make people accountable, because a large part of our problem is also people's attitude or behavior, and unfortunately we don't invest enough in people right now. So I think one of the things that I feel that, like, this is a personal opinion, that works for the developed world is that those kids or those, the people while growing up, they are being shown entirely different dreams than what we are shown. For us, maybe car is still the dream. For them now, cycle and greens are the dream. So, a large part of this has to also, people have to be accountable. One organization, one government, one stakeholder cannot really bring that change. It has to be all of us. So that's one of the answers about enforcement. It has to be, of course, governance, but it also has to be some accountability to people. Next is the, of course, eventually it keeps not even humans sometimes, but economy as the center of every development that's happening. Again, a large part of our visioning or our larger aspiration is related to having more GDP, having more economy, having more, sectors, and in all of that, having more investment, and in all of that, we are losing out on rivers, forests, land, people, communities, all of those things. So again, one of the things that we are trying to do at NIOA is associate economy with these assets, to tell them that tomorrow, if this does not exist, this is going to be your economic output. So that's something, again, we are trying to explore, attaching some sort of economic value to the assets cities have right now. And then how do they start responding to that? Or going beyond economy and showing them the, the social, cultural benefits of such assets. And I'm sure in your work also, for urban forests, for land in general, you would be doing that. So to show them the big picture really is what we are trying to do. We still have to see results on how, that with cities. But that's something we are trying to approach. Like if economy is at the end of the day your goal, if you don't have this asset, this is going to be the economic impact.
So my suggestion would be to not call it an asset. That is my problem.
Sure.
Because I think the moment you begin to sort of, I understand where you're coming from in the sense that you want to persuade people who speak only that language, but I think it's important to shift that language. I don't think we have that much time left for us to, what you're saying, that sensitizing us, like climate devastation is really upon us. So in that sense, I don't think we have that much time to, I think we have to revamp the paradigm actually. I mean, they're saying that we're going to have 1 billion refugees by 2050. That's 25 years from now.
Yeah.
Sure. We have quite a few, and as well as we have got 18 questions online. So, sir, you were going to say your question.
Thank you. My name is Adrian. I work for IDRC, and maybe the answer is to do the guidelines, but really, and we don't have time now probably, but really love to hear more what the guidelines say about how you design the kind of participatory processes. How do you make local? With all its divergences and different interests, right? How do you implement that in a way that communities benefit from and play their part in those processes?
So I would actually, recommend you to go through our URMPs instead of this guideline, because URMPs are actually targeting very focused interventions towards participatory planning and how do you bring different stakeholders together. Again, we are sometimes not aware, but even the smallest of cities are doing some exemplary work in that regard, and URMPs sort of capture that. So I'm happy to share the links with you, and if you have any more suggestions that we can take up, we are really, really happy to incorporate them.
Yes, no, you can ask your question, and then Pushpaji will come in the next round after the online round.
So I have 2 questions actually. Just quickly going. So URMPs, as far as my understanding goes, is more about city context, and it provides you that flexibility to go with that particular area's context. And in terms of implementation, how is this flexibility a challenge as well? In, like, for example, you go with the terms of references, beginning from the terms of references to going from agencies who would do it or implement it. So I would like to know more about the implementation challenge of it. And the second part of the question is URMPs in isolation without master plans. How do you go about getting that purpose done? Like, so how is this like not a problematic thing?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarang. So to answer your first question, when we begin the URMP process in any city, the first and the foremost step is to actually create a URMP working group. And like we pointed out, the major challenge is that we have multiple agencies and only ULB cannot govern this plan. So the ownership is not actually just the ULB or the development authority. The ownership is with the working group, right? And that working group has different stakeholders, not just the line agencies. It has industries and corporates. It has, so civil society organization. It has academia. It has hotel associations, temple samitis, ghat associations, all of those representatives. And in every city that we have gone about doing this, they have been diligently part of this URMP working group. In fact, one of the positive examples that I can quote, and also to answer the question Namita asked, in Aurangabad, again, very encouraging was, it's a booming industrial city. We sat with Confederation of Indian Industries, Aurangabad chapter, and they said, we are ready to roll out this thing. We want to give money for, restoring this. What really clicks is you have to see what is in it for that stakeholder. If an industry needs to come on board, how do they benefit from this? And for them, it was largely about, re-imaging the city. How do we create a brand around a city that's, doing very good in terms of all of these things? So you really have to, use that working group to understand the aspirations that different stakeholders have, and then with consensus come up with the interventions that URMP suggests. So that's largely about the implementation. And for these 60 round of 60 URMPs, we are going a step ahead. So far, it was only the ULB that was there. This time we are taking on board the state government too. So state government now drives the whole thing. They are, sort of monitoring the whole thing and how it's being rolled out. So again, a lot of our missions are governed by state. Something like Amrut is governed by state, SBM is governed by state. So state has to be a part of this process. So we are trying to engage more and more with stakeholders and create this whole sensitization thing with them. And URMP in isolation, again, it's not in isolation with the development plan, because we don't want to add another plan in the list of plans that the city already has.
What he meant is that a URMP for a city that did not have master plan.
Okay. So far, we have not
have-
come across any city which doesn't have a master plan or development plan. Usually in West Bengal, you don't have master plans, but they still have land use plans. So you have one or the other instrument which this can inform.
Let's have one round. We have got 18 questions. I don't know. Let me see which of them can skip, but there were somewhat multiple questions, but and some are informative, more sharing information. So quickly, when was how long MPD 2041 remained a draft? In the sense, like when was it prepared?
I think we handed it over to DTA 3 years back. I'm actually not sure of the timelines right now. So yeah, I think either 2 or 3 years back. So
Not aware. So this is from actually Rosamond Thomas. I think it was much before that, actually about 6 years. Yeah. Mukta was part of Mukta was also. Yeah. So yeah, 3 or 4 years. That's the time frame. Anyway, is it a good? Here is a question. Please. Is it a good idea to plan for only stretches of rivers that run through cities? How about the rest of the stretch?
yes, absolutely. And that's why, the integration with district level plans and basin plans too. You can't bound river by administrative boundaries. You really have to connect the dots. So the effort with collaboration, and a lot of understanding from National Mission for Clean Ganga, it is the way that we are taking, that we are connecting basin, district and city.
So this is an interesting experience. Rosamond Thomas lives in near the Meenachil in Kerala, and almost across the town there is concrete right on the banks. I think it is a typical riverfront development project, making the whole river through the town something like a drain. Flooding is routine and used to be in my grandfather's time too. So it was not recent one. For those days, there was less construction and people brought out small wooden boats when it flooded. Now there is massive construction and flooding is not celebration time as it used to be, but a disaster. So this is one of those experiences from a specific context of Kerala. Now, the other questions I'll skip, I'll just read it because can there not be plans for allowing buildings to fall into disuse once their lifespan is over, if they have come up in floodplain? I think the same person also shared a source, which I'll share it with you, to use moringa seeds for water purification.
Oh, wow.
So the other question is that for the Yamuna River Basin, do we have any data related to provisioning and regulatory services that Yamuna Basin has compromised during the past 2 or 3 decades? You could possibly share the data from any study documenting impact on. So I think perhaps you should, if you know, just share the data source on Yamuna regulatory services that have failed.
Services.
That, if you would like to respond, you can perhaps note it down.
I would really urge you from Delhi's perspective to go through the environment and physical infrastructure baseline. They are accessible, easily available online. Beyond Delhi, I'm afraid even I'm not aware of, but I will definitely look into it and get back to you.
Beyond Delhi, I think you need to look for the state government sources primarily. And also there is this federal institutions like Upper Yamuna River Board, or there is also another institution, another organization called Yamuna Basin Organization. Depends on what you're looking for. But again, from, I guess, I'm just trying, I think Rosamond Thomas had quite a few questions, very long questions.
I'll connect with her on LinkedIn.
Right, perhaps. The presentation is very intriguing, and it feels very positive seeing how you are going ahead. My questions are, what do you do about the lack of absence of ecological data? It's very difficult to rein on agencies, I think, DN agencies, to generate data all the time, precisely because of the expenditure involved and the time it gets into generating data. How have you dealt with it in terms of lack of ecological data? How does decisions in DP affect the affect or impact the river systems? Well, that's quite a big question.
Yeah.
At urban or suburban scales. So that I think you definitely need to connect with her on LinkedIn and share. So any quick comments on it?
Just about the ecological data, I would definitely urge you to look at the Urban River Management Index, which is within the Urban River Management Plan document. It's actually a list of indicators that can be very easily mapped by the city. It's not complex data sets. It's very easy data sets that can be regularly monitored and collected by the city.
So Pushpaji, I think we will close it. I'll just run it through with this. Yeah. So this question about the data is from Priyanka Kanhare. She's a faculty member or PhD scholar from SEPT University. And then we have got one question from Umi. Thank you for the insightful presentation, Ishleen. Please initiate a river-sensitive master planning approach in Guwahati. Are you planning to do that?
Well, now, yes.
All the problems and barriers you mentioned are present here, and the disconnect between urban development and water management has reached such a critical level that it is now endangering lives of the people here. Please note that the issues go much beyond Brahmaputra River Basin management and encompasses surface, ground, and wastewater sources. That's quite a comprehensive question. So I find inadequate green space despite various initiatives. So how are drones playing a role and what are the challenges?
Drones, I mean, largely it's actually giving a bird's eye view of the city, but we still need, all that data or the imagery that we are looking at, because that, of course, satellite imagery also is helping us with to really inform the policies within the development plan. We have, a WHO norm of 9 square meter per person, and that has to be equitably followed across the city, maybe taking ward or a neighborhood as the unit that we measure for that.
So here is Sarang, I think I missed it. This is the first question. This is about Pune Riverfront Development Project that is being implemented completely inside blue floodline by way of dumping tens of thousands of trucks of debris on floodplains, leading to reduction in the cross section by 40%. This will have huge impact on flood carrying capacity. Unfortunately, SGOM, I don't know what it is, and SEIAA has given EC to the project. EC is environmental clearance. Yeah, right. Environmental clearance to the project. We are fighting against the project in the courts for last many years. There are many such projects being implemented pan-India.
Yeah,
Dr. Pushpa Patel.
thank you. And Ishleen, very pleased to meet you and hear you. And I'm also very pleased to know that NIUA is venturing into new areas. I was there for a long time. So I'm very happy. I have two questions. One is relating to your linking up URMPs with master plans. And as I think a comment was made earlier that you are the rivers are bigger and the relationship with the space is wider than the city space. So why didn't you link your study with regional development plans in the cities that exist there where these exist rather than master plans? And this debate has gone on between Srinivas and me. He thinks regional development plans are not statutory, whereas I think they are. So for water bodies and water resources, master plan is not the right instrument. And this is what I have said before, and I would like to get your opinion on that why didn't you think of other instruments? And the second question I think is, I think Sarang raised it already. URMPs and its interaction with the river development plans and river basin development plans. So is there a scope to do it in future? Have you thought about it? Because relating it to master plans is very limited. These are the two short questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pushpa. And I mean, while they're very relevant questions, and again, they would probably make this discourse and the eventual action better. Unfortunately, I'll have to agree with Sir that regional plans do not have legal standing.
No, but
No,
they have.
We have an
Once,
ongoing debate.
once it's passed
Let
and
me-
it becomes an act, it's a legal document.
So-
So let's not do it.
Okay, but I think one of the major problems that you face in that is, and which is something that in basin management plans also you face, that you need state chief ministers to come on board on any policy, then you have to
Of course.
roll out. Right, and while a Delhi might have a different priority, Haryana has different priority, Uttar Pradesh has different priority, so it's extremely difficult. We face that at a smaller scale within the city. Now we are talking about much larger actors. So the idea was to start, looking at even those smaller changes within cities, which are more controllable, which, we can start seeing some change, and then maybe there's a chance to scale it up, right? Because otherwise we'll just keep on, moving in that circle of blames. He's not agreeing, she's not agreeing, this and that.
That's
Or-
real life.
That's real life. And again, finding the smallest opportunity wherever we can. And I think we could really, through urban river management plan, we could really see that opportunity. I mean, I think the biggest achievement I feel that this urban river management plan has been able to do is to bring Ministry of Water Resources and Housing and Urban Affairs together. That's also a big feat in itself. So yeah,
Just to clear it up, sorry, I think you,
This is
I may have
complicated.
interrupted you, so please finish.
But we can have our debate afterwards.
So not, just for the clarification part, yes. It is not that regional plan is either statutory or not statutory. It depends on the legislation that is in place in that particular state. A regional plan is statutory in Maharashtra, but not necessarily in other states. That is the point that I was trying to make. So
Yes.
Uh,
yes, I
having
get
said that,
Okay.
now, I think, would you like to take more questions or otherwise?
there are
In any
more
case, we are
questions.
past the time, so we may have to wrap it up. They are adding up as we go.
I think I have my email ID on display
On
there.
the screen, so
Yes.
please write to Ishleen.
Please feel free to write to me, and I'll, answer with whatever limited knowledge I have, but I'll definitely maybe reach out to CPR to answer some of those questions.
Or after 6 months later,
Give another thought. I think
Yes.
that's finally nice to say.
yes.
That's very encouraging.
After the 16, if not before the all the plans are complete.
Yes.
URMPs, 60
Make
URMPs.
another
Every
presentation.
time you finish 10 URMPs, you should come and share, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So anyway, I think, thank you very much, Ishlin. I think this is a fantastic conversation. It keeps reminding us, at least for the team that here at CPR, which is working on this particular research project, which is trying to look at critically the instrument of statutory spatial planning. I think I should add that part as well, because it tends to be usually spatial planning. So statutory planning in cities, I think you have an instrument, which is a statutory spatial plan. On the other hand, you have an institutional ecosystem that was built around the statutory model. So what we figured out is certainly something that we have been arguing, and we have been pursuing this line of inquiry, is that the very structure or the rationalities that inform the statutory master plan or statutory planning instrument itself is perhaps outdated, if not outdated, at least certainly not adequate to accommodate these interests like water-centric planning. At the same time, we talked about it and we touched upon, and there were plenty of questions saying that whether these water and then environmental concerns, whether it is within the jurisdiction of the city, whatever jurisdiction that you call it, in terms of protection of these water bodies, plus rivers, that river stretches, are concerns that emerge from beyond the boundary, whether it is coordinating with institutions like CTCB to maintain the norms, or to cope with these risks that are emerging, like the urban floods and other kind of challenges. I think we need to relook at the institutional ecosystem itself, which is also somewhat, over time. I think we haven't had a chance to review, if at all, I think the better word, and then reimagine both the instrument as well as the institutional ecosystem. And I see that you are actually, at least the NIUA, pursuing these questions in its own way. At the same time, we are also struggling with some of these questions, and look forward to further convergence and then sharing knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing you more often here.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.